We've been building our walkie-talkie model, and we're getting very close to finishing it. In fact, we only have 3 more steps to go. And if I move over to our final model, you can see that our current model is missing just a few details. We still need to add the feet. We need to add these 3 side cutouts. And also I want to split the walkie-talkie body from front to back so that we get a little more of a realistic, slightly rounded edge between the 2 parts when we render it. So let's go ahead and get started on those details. Alright, so the first item we're going to add will be the feet. So let me go into the front view, and I'll go into my not using layer. Let me switch some of these on, and we'll switch on the underlay layer. So if I zoom in here, you can see here's where the feet come in. And this is going to be symmetrical, so that kind of helps me out. What I'm going to do is draw a little reference curve that comes out here so I know where to draw the cross section for this foot. So I just grab my polyline tool. I'll make sure I get a snap at the quad midpoint of the bottom here. I'll drag out to the right, and I'll just tap the tab key to make sure I'm constrained to a straight line. And I'm just going to visually kind of put that end of that line right about there. Let me switch off this layer, and we'll go into our perspective mode. Now, one thing I do want to check, and that is that this line is drawn in the center of the object, and you can see it actually snapped to the line over here. So to center that, that's pretty easy. All I'm going to do is just draw myself a little guide curve that goes from there to there. I'll grab this piece, and I'll do a simple move, and I'll move from that end point to the midpoint, and I can go ahead and delete that curve. So now I have my guide curve all set up, and from here I can draw a rectangle that's drawn from the center, and I know I'll be drawing my part in exactly the right location. So let's switch off some layers that we don't need while we're working on this. And we can basically switch everything off except the main body. Let's go in our top view and see if that's going to be in our way. And I'm going to switch to ghosted mode, so Control-Alt-G for ghosted mode. And I can see the line here, so I'm still going to be able to work with that. So I'll go into my rectangles. I'm going to choose a rounded rectangle. And the command line is asking for the first corner of the rectangle. I actually want to draw this from the center, so I'm going to click on the center, and now it's asking for the center of my rectangle. So I'll click right here. It's going to be always to the left or to the right. So I'm going to type a 3 because I want this to be 3 millimeters. And then I also want the height or the depth here to be 15 millimeters. And you can see I'm starting to get this shape. This is actually giving me a conic shape. You know, I was going to do a rounded arc here, but I think actually the conic shape might fit a little bit better to our overall design. We've got kind of the conic shape going on for some other things. So let's put that in, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball that. And I think a shape about like that kind of looks soft enough, and yet it kind of relates to some of the other forms we have going on here. So as you'll see, that's placed that right there for us. And if I bring back my sketch again and go into my front view, notice that we have quite a bit of taper on this. So I'm going to take that conic rectangle that we just drew, and I'm going to extrude it, but I'm also going to tell it to taper at the same time. So I can take this curve now, which was our guide curve, and I can just hide that. In the front view, I'll just grab my conic rectangle, and I'll go to Solid, Extrude Planar Curve, and I'll choose Tapered. Now if I drag that up, you can see the taper's going in completely the wrong direction. So no issue at all there. All I need to do is click on Draft Angle. But before you click on it, just take a moment to notice what the setting is and what direction it is. You can have positive and negative numbers on this. So right now, our draft angle equals 5 degrees. So I'll click on this, and I know that'll be a negative number because I want the draft to go in the opposite direction. And I want to draft a little bit more than that, so let's try a 10 and see if that's going to work. That looks all right, but let's even put a bigger number. Let's go negative 15. All right, and I think I'm happy with that because by the time we add our fillets and things in there, that's going to soften up and blend out a little bit more. So I'm just going to drag this up about into here and then click. So notice that we pierce the surface right down here. And if I go into my perspective mode and kind of helicopter around, know that we're within the body shape all around this part. So let me turn off my sketch again. We can take this shape, the poly surface, and we're going to go ahead and mirror that. Now I built everything around the center line when we started, so I can just go to Transform, select Mirror, and I can type 0 for the start of my plane. And now if I hold down my Shift key and drag forwards or backwards, then I know that we're going to constrain ourselves to a plane that lines up with our model. And there we go. So let's take these three shapes and we'll combine them. I'm going to do a Boolean union. And remember, the first part you select is going to be whatever layer these end up on. So I want this all to stay on this main body layer. So I'll select that first, then I'll choose this foot, and then this foot. And I'll hit enter. Those all turn this bluish purple color. That lets me know it all worked. So now we just add a couple of fillets into this and we'll be all set. So I'll go under my fillet edge. I'll choose my variable radius fillet. Remember, we can also choose this from under our solid menu, fillet edge and fillet edge. And it's set to 1. We'll see how that works out. I'm going to chain edges just in case there's any odd edges there. Enter. I'll hit chain edges again and select this one. We might as well do these both at the same time. I'll hit enter. I'll hit preview just to make sure I get a nice little visual of what's going to happen there. I think that looks pretty good. That all worked out nicely. And then we're just going to apply a fillet again so I can hit the space bar to reapply the fillet. Again, I'll choose chain edges. That way I know I'll select everything going all the way around there. I'll hit enter to show I'm finished selecting those edges. Then I can choose chain edges again, and I can choose these edges. I'm not going to select anything else, so I can hit enter. And I need to be very careful with this. I can put in some custom fillets here. If I zoom in, that tells me I can't get any larger than 1 millimeter in this area. You can see that it's coming down. If I go any further, it's going to overlap right here, and that's going to fail the fillet. So I need to add some fillets in here. So I'll hit add handle. And the first one I want to put is right here, and that way that's going to lock that to 1 millimeter. And I think I'll also grab one out here and another one there. That way we're going to constrain that to 1 millimeter all the way around. And I'll do the same thing on this side. I'll snap one right there, one at this midpoint, and then we'll add one more at this midpoint here. I'll hit enter to tell it I've finished applying my handles. So nothing changes. All we've done is added a little more control over this interior, but I can now take this one and I can click on it and I'll type 2 and hit enter. I just want to make sure we don't break out of the surface over here. That seems to be okay. Try 3, just see if we can get away with it. Now on your model, you may have some slightly different results depending on how you've built things. But if you're following along using my model, you should be able to use the same shapes. So I think that's going to work. If anything, we may need to come back in and just make that a 2, and I think that'll work for sure if we make that a 2. But we'll try the 3. I'll hit enter, and that all worked. So now we have our feet applied to our model, and in our next lesson, we'll go ahead and apply the side cuts.